You scroll through your phone at 3 in the morning, your thumb moving mechanically across the screen, pausing on videos you don't actually watch, reading words that don't register, searching for something, anything, that might make you feel something again. Your chest feels hollow, like someone reached inside and scooped out whatever it was that used to make you care about tomorrow, about your dreams, about the person staring back at you in the bathroom mirror with eyes that look older than they should. You've tried everything. You've watched the motivational videos, read the self-help books, forced yourself to go through the motions of what used to bring you joy, but it's like trying to start a fire with wet wood. Everything just sits there, cold and unresponsive. Your friends ask if you're okay and you smile, you nod. You say you're just tired. Because how do you explain that you're not sad, you're not angry, you're just nothing, floating in this grey space where nothing touches you anymore, where even pain would be welcome because at least it would mean you can still feel something. And maybe, just maybe, this numbness you're experiencing, this profound disconnection from life itself, isn't the end that it feels like. Maybe Rumi, who lived 8 centuries ago but somehow understood this exact emptiness, knew something about why we go numb, why our souls sometimes just stop responding, and what waits on the other side of this frozen wasteland you're trapped in right now. Because here's what nobody tells you about numbness. It's not random, it's not a malfunction. Your soul didn't just suddenly decide to stop working one day for no reason. Rumi understood that numbness is actually a message, a desperate signal from the deepest part of you that's been screaming for so long without being heard that it finally just went silent. Think about it. When did you start feeling nothing? Was it after you gave everything to someone who gave nothing back? Was it after you worked yourself to exhaustion chasing goals that someone else told you mattered? Was it after you spent years smiling through situations that were slowly killing something essential inside you? Your numbness didn't appear out of nowhere. It appeared because some part of you, the part that Rumi would call your essential self, your divine spark, finally got tired of being ignored, betrayed, abandoned by your own choices, and so it withdrew. It went underground. It stopped sending signals because you weren't listening anyway. Rumi talked about something he called the false self, the constructed identity we build to survive in the world, the mask we wear that smiles when we're dying inside, that says yes when everything in us wants to scream no, that keeps performing long after the theater has emptied out. And here's the thing that's going to sound harsh, but you need to hear it. Your numbness isn't the problem. Your numbness is your soul's last-ditch attempt to save itself from the life you've been forcing it to live. It's a shutdown, yes, but not a malfunction. It's a deliberate shutdown, like when your body forces you to sleep when you've pushed too far, like when your immune system creates a fever to burn out an infection. Your numbness is a fever. Your soul is trying to burn out the life that's been poisoning it. And this is where it gets interesting, where Rumi's wisdom cuts through all the modern advice about fixing yourself and getting back to normal. Because what if normal is exactly what made you numb? What if the life you're trying to get back to is the life your soul is desperately trying to escape from? Rumi spent years in conventional religious study, respected, successful by all external measures, and he was profoundly, utterly empty. Then he met Shams of Tabriz, a wandering mystic who asked him one simple question: are you here to study about divine love or to experience it? And that question shattered everything, because Rumi realized he'd spent decades learning about life, thinking about life, performing life, but never actually living it, never actually feeling it. He'd gone numb without even realizing it, numb in the worst way, the way where you're so busy doing everything right that you don't notice you've stopped being alive. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this. When was the last time you did something because your soul wanted it? Not because you thought you should want it, not because it would impress someone or prove something or move you closer to some goal you're not even sure is yours, but because something deep inside you said, yes, this, more of this. Can you even remember? Because most of us can't. Most of us have been living according to a script we didn't write for so long that we've forgotten what our own voice sounds like. And then we wonder why nothing moves us anymore. We wonder why we feel nothing. But Rumi would say you're not feeling nothing. You're feeling the absence of yourself. You're feeling the emptiness left behind when you've been living someone else's life in your own body for so long that your soul packed its bags and left. Here's what happens when you ignore your soul's whispers. First, It whispers. It sends you little signals, small moments of discomfort, quiet feelings of this doesn't feel right, gentle tugs towards something different. But you ignore them because you're busy, because you have responsibilities, because you've already committed, because changing course would disappoint people, because you're supposed to want what you have. So the whispers get louder. They become anxiety. They become that knot in your stomach on Sunday nights. They become insomnia. They become that growing sense that something is fundamentally wrong, but you can't put your finger on what. And still you ignore them. You medicate them. You push through them. You tell yourself you're just stressed. You just need a vacation. You just need to try harder, be more grateful, think more positively. And so finally your soul stops whispering. It stops shouting. It goes completely silent. And that silence, that profound nothing you're feeling right now, that's not depression, although it might look like it. That's not laziness, although others might call it that. That's your soul in exile. That's your essential self in hiding. That's the deepest part of you that knows who you really are, refusing to participate in the life you're forcing it to live. Rumi had a term for this. He called it the dark night. But not the dark night you've heard about in spiritual books, the poetic romantic version, where you suffer beautifully and emerge transformed. No. Rumi's dark night is brutal. It's the night where everything you built your identity on reveals itself as hollow. It's the night where your achievements don't matter, your relationships don't fill you, your future plans feel meaningless, and you're left sitting in the rubble of a life that looks perfect on the outside, but feels like a prison on the inside. And the worst part, the part that makes it truly dark, is that you can't even cry about it, because crying would require feeling something, and you feel nothing at all. You're beyond tears. You're beyond anger. You're beyond hope. You're in that terrible neutral zone where nothing reaches you, nothing matters, nothing moves. But here's what Rumi discovered in his own dark night, and here's what you need to understand about yours. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. This numbness you're experiencing, this profound disconnection, this feeling of being dead while still breathing, this is actually your soul's way of forcing a conversation you've been avoiding for years. It's saying, I will not participate in this anymore. I will not help you build a life that has nothing to do with who you actually are. I will not energize pursuits that deaden us. I will not celebrate achievements that mean nothing. I'm going on strike. And that strike, that complete withdrawal of your soul's cooperation, that's what you're feeling as numbness. Your soul hasn't abandoned you. It's staging an intervention. Think about the last time you felt truly alive. And I don't mean happy. Happiness is cheap. It comes and goes with circumstances. I mean alive, present, real, connected to something deeper than your thoughts. For most people, when they really think about it, those moments have something in common. They're moments when the false self, that constructed identity, that mask, that performance momentarily dropped away. Maybe it was in nature, alone, with no one to impress. Maybe it was in the middle of a crisis when there was no time for pretense. Maybe it was in a moment of genuine connection with someone who saw past your defenses. Maybe it was in creative flow, when you forgot yourself completely. Those moments, those rare moments when you felt real, that's your soul reminding you it exists, showing you what it feels like to actually inhabit your own life, instead of watching it from a distance. And here's the devastating truth that Rumi forces us to confront. For most of us, those moments are rare not because life is hard, not because we're busy, not because circumstances are difficult, but because we're terrified of them. We're terrified of feeling that alive, because feeling that alive would reveal just how dead we've been the rest of the time. It would show us the gap between who we really are and who we've been pretending to be. It would force us to acknowledge that we've been building a life that has almost nothing to do with our actual soul. And that acknowledgement, that seeing, is so painful, so threatening to everything we've constructed, that we'd rather stay numb. We'd rather feel nothing than feel that. Rumi tells a story about a man who spent his entire life building a magnificent house. He designed every detail, supervised every element of construction, dedicated decades to making it perfect. And when it was finally finished, when he could finally move in and enjoy it, he stood at the threshold and realized something that nearly destroyed him. He'd built the house for someone else. Not literally for another person, but built it to impress others, to prove something, to live up to some image he'd absorbed about what success looked like, what a good life looked like. And now here he was, standing at the door of this magnificent house, and he couldn't make himself walk in because it wasn't his. None of it was his. He'd spent his whole life building a beautiful prison. And the worst part, the part that made him fall to his knees at that threshold, was realizing that he couldn't even remember what kind of house he would have built for himself. He'd been living for others' approval for so long that he'd completely lost touch with his own desires, his own vision, his own soul. Does that story gut you? Because it should. Because most of us are that man. Most of us are standing at the threshold of lives we've spent years building and realizing somewhere deep down that none of it is really ours. That job you worked so hard for, is it what your soul wanted or what you thought you should want? That relationship you're in, did you choose it from your depths or from your fears? Those friends you surround yourself with, do they know who you really are or just the version of you that's learned to be acceptable? Those goals you're chasing, whose goals are they really? And when you start asking these questions, when you really start looking at the gap between the life you're living and the life your soul actually wants, the numbness makes perfect sense. Of course you feel nothing. You've been working yourself to death, building a house you never wanted, living a life that has nothing to do with your actual self. Your numbness isn't a problem to fix. It's information to receive. But here's where most people get it wrong when they hear this. They think, okay, so I need to burn it all down, quit my job, leave my relationship, move to Bali, find my true self. And Rumi would say, slow down, because that's just your false self trying to fix the problem, trying to control the transformation, trying to manage your way back to feeling something. The false self loves big, dramatic gestures, loves plans and strategies, loves the idea of reinventing yourself. But that's still the false self in charge. That's still you trying to think your way out of a problem that's happening at a much deeper level. The real transformation, the kind Rumi points to, doesn't start with changing your external circumstances. It starts with being willing to sit in the numbness without trying to fix it, without trying to escape it, without trying to understand it. It starts with being willing to feel nothing and stay present anyway. This is the part where people usually check out because it sounds too passive, too accepting, too much like giving up. But stay with me because this is where Rumi's teaching gets radical. He says the wound is the place where the light enters you, but we've romanticized that into thinking wounds are somehow beautiful, somehow noble. They're not. Wounds hurt. They're ugly. They're messy. And the wound of numbness, the wound of feeling nothing, of being disconnected from your own life, that's one of the most painful wounds there is because it's invisible, it's hard to explain, and nobody takes it seriously. But Rumi would say that wound, that specific wound of numbness, is actually an opening. It's your false self cracking. It's the constructed identity you've been living from losing its grip. It's the persona you've been maintaining finally running out of energy. And yes, it feels like dying because it is dying. Your false self is dying. The you that you thought you were, the you that you've been performing for years, that version is dying. And it needs to die. It needs to die so something true can finally be born. But here's the unbearable part that Rumi doesn't sugarcoat. You can't force that birth. You can't control it. You can't make it happen on your timeline. All you can do is stop resisting the death. Stop trying to revive the false self. Stop trying to get back to normal. Stop trying to feel the way you used to feel, because the way you used to feel was part of the problem. You felt motivated about the wrong things. You felt excited about pursuits that weren't yours. You felt connected to a life that wasn't really your life. So of course now you feel nothing. Your soul withdrew its energy from all of that. And the work now, the real work, isn't to get that energy back and redirect it to the same old places. The work is to sit in the emptiness long enough that you can finally hear what your soul has been trying to tell you all along. Rumi spent months in silence after Shams disappeared. Months where he barely spoke, barely moved, barely functioned. Everyone around him was worried. They tried to snap him out of it, to get him back to normal, to remind him of his responsibilities, his students, his reputation. And he ignored all of them, because he understood something they didn't. He wasn't depressed, he wasn't having a breakdown. He was being unmade so he could be remade. The person he'd been, the respected scholar, the proper teacher, the conventional holy man, that person had to die completely before the real Rumi, the mystic, the poet, the madman in love with the divine, could emerge. And that death, that unmaking, it looked like numbness, it looked like nothing, but it was everything. It was the most important transformation of his life, and it couldn't be rushed. So when you're lying in bed at 3 in the morning feeling nothing, when you're going through your days like a ghost in your own life, when you can't remember the last time anything actually mattered to you, consider this. What if you're not broken? What if you're not sick? What if you're not failing? What if you're in the middle of the most important transformation of your life, and the numbness is exactly what's supposed to be happening right now? What if your soul withdrew its energy from your false life not to punish you but to save you? What if this emptiness you're terrified of is actually sacred space, the space between who you were and who you're becoming, the space where the old you dies and the new you hasn't been born yet? What if the answer isn't to fill the emptiness as quickly as possible, but to let it be empty, to stop running from it, to actually inhabit it? I know that sounds impossible right now. I know every fiber of you wants this feeling to end, wants to go back to feeling something, anything, even if it's pain. But Rumi would tell you that's your false self panicking because it knows its time is up. The false self needs you to feel something, needs you to be motivated, needs you to care about the things it decided you should care about, because that's how it maintains control. But your soul doesn't need that. Your soul is perfectly comfortable in the emptiness, because the emptiness is actually fullness. It's just fullness without the false self's constant commentary, without the false self's endless demands, without the false self's interpretation of what everything means. The emptiness is what's real. All the stuff you've been filling it with, that was the illusion. And here's what starts to happen when you stop fighting the numbness, when you stop trying to fix it or escape it or understand it. You start noticing small things, not big revelations, not dramatic transformations, but small, quiet things. The way light hits the wall in the afternoon, the sound of rain, the taste of water. Things you haven't really registered in years because you've been so caught up in the big things, the important things, the things you're supposed to care about. And these small things, they don't make you feel happy exactly. They don't solve anything. But there's something there, something real, something that doesn't need your false self's approval or interpretation. And maybe one day you find yourself drawn to something you haven't thought about in years, something you loved as a child, before you learned to be practical, before you learned what you should want. And you don't do anything about it, you just notice it. You notice the tiny flicker of something that might not be numbness. This is how the soul starts to return from exile, not with trumpets and declarations, not with dramatic realizations and sudden transformations, but quietly, tentatively, testing to see if it's safe to come back yet, testing to see if you're finally ready to listen, finally ready to let it lead, instead of you dragging it through a life it never chose. And the answer to whether it's safe, whether you're ready, isn't something you can speak. It's something you show through your willingness to sit in the discomfort, to not know what comes next, to let the old you die without rushing to replace it with a new improved version. The soul doesn't trust words. The soul doesn't trust promises. The soul only trusts your willingness to wait, to be empty, to stop performing. Rumi says there is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen. And that voice, it's not some mystical external thing. It's your soul, it's the part of you that knows exactly who you are, beneath all the layers of who you've been trying to be. And it's been speaking to you your whole life, but you couldn't hear it over the noise of your false self's constant demands and interpretations and judgments. And now, in this numbness, in this silence, maybe for the first time in years, or maybe for the first time ever, there's finally space for that voice. But you can't hear it if you're frantically trying to fill the silence. You can't hear it if you're desperately trying to feel something. You can only hear it if you're willing to sit in the nothing and listen to what the nothing is actually saying. And what is it saying? It's saying, stop. Stop performing. Stop pretending. Stop building a life that looks right and start feeling for a life that is right. Stop asking what you should do and start noticing what you're drawn to. Stop trying to figure it all out and start trusting that your soul knows the way even when your mind has no idea where you're going. Stop looking for yourself in other people's eyes and start looking for yourself in your own quiet moments. Stop waiting to feel ready and start accepting that you're going to have to walk forward into your real life while still feeling empty, while still not knowing, while still numb. Because the numbness doesn't go away first and then you start living. You start living and then, slowly, as your soul realizes you're serious this time, as it realizes you're actually going to honor what it wants instead of what you think you should want, the feeling starts to return. Not all at once, not permanently, but in moments, in glimpses, in small whispers of aliveness that grow stronger the more you listen. Sei que alguns de vocês estão assistindo e reconhecem cada palavra que falei. Sei que você carrega essa dormência sozinho há tanto tempo que começou a acreditar que é assim que vai ser para sempre. Se você está pronto, mesmo com medo, mesmo sem saber se vai ajudar, escreva nos comentários apenas 3 palavras: nada dormido por dentro. Só isso. Porque quando você admite isso, quando você para de fingir mesmo que apenas num comentário anônimo na internet, algo começa a mudar. Não dramaticamente, não imediatamente, mas algo começa. E talvez alguém do outro lado da tela, alguém que também está dormindo por dentro, vai ler suas palavras e pela primeira vez em meses vai sentir que não está sozinho nessa escuridão. Rumi sabia que às vezes o caminho de volta para sentir começa admitindo que você parou de sentir. Comente agora enquanto a coragem está aqui. E para você que não vai comentar, que ainda não está pronto, tudo bem. Sua presença silenciosa também é sagrada. Here's what Rumi discovered that changed everything. He discovered that the divine, the source God, whatever name you give it, isn't found by being good enough, holy enough, pure enough. It's found by being real enough. It's found by being so exhausted with pretending, so tired of performing, so numb from living a false life that you finally give up and let yourself be exactly what you are in this moment, which is empty, which is lost, which is nothing. And in that moment of complete surrender, not surrender as a spiritual technique, but surrender as the absolute end of your ability to keep pretending, something shifts. Not because you did something right, but because you finally stopped doing everything wrong. You stopped trying to be something. You stopped trying to feel something. You stopped trying to become something. And in that stopping, in that complete exhaustion, your soul finally has room to breathe, to move, to speak. But you have to understand, this isn't a technique. You can't fake this surrender. You can't strategically decide to give up as a way to get what you want. The false self would love to turn even this into another method, another path to control the outcome. But real surrender, the kind that actually transforms you, only happens when you've truly exhausted every other option, when you've tried everything and nothing worked, when you're so tired of yourself and your strategies and your attempts to fix this that you just stop. You just sit down in the middle of your numbness and you stop fighting it. And you don't stop fighting it because you've read that you should, or because some mystic poet from the 13th century says it's a good idea. You stop fighting it because you literally don't have the energy to fight anymore. That's when it's real. That's when transformation becomes possible. And then, maybe weeks later, maybe months later, you're sitting somewhere ordinary, doing something completely mundane, and you feel it. A flicker, a tiny spark of something. Maybe it's sadness, maybe it's anger, maybe it's joy, maybe it's just interest, simple curiosity about something, and it's so small you almost don't notice it. But you do notice it. And for the first time in forever, you don't try to amplify it. Don't try to make it into something bigger. Don't try to use it as evidence that you're getting better. You just let it be what it is, a small flicker of feeling in an ocean of numbness. And then it goes away and you're numb again. But something has changed because now you know the numbness isn't permanent. Now you know your soul is still there, still alive, just waiting for you to create a life that's actually worth feeling something about. This is the journey Rumi invites us on. Not a journey of fixing ourselves, or improving ourselves, or becoming better versions of ourselves. A journey of dying to the false self so completely that our real self has no choice but to emerge. And that death, it looks like numbness. It feels like nothing. It seems like the end. But it's not the end. It's the dark before dawn. It's the winter before spring. It's the silence before the music starts again. And you can't rush it, you can't skip it, you can't avoid it. All you can do is stop running from it, stop trying to fix it, and start trusting that your soul knows exactly what it's doing, even when your mind has no idea, even when you feel nothing, even when everything seems pointless and empty and dead. Because here's the final thing Rumi wants you to understand about numbness. It's not the opposite of feeling. It's not the absence of your soul. It's actually your soul protecting itself, going dormant like a plant in winter, conserving its energy until the conditions are right for growth again. And those conditions, those right conditions, they're not about your external circumstances getting better. They're about you finally being willing to stop betraying yourself. They're about you finally being willing to honor what your soul actually wants, instead of what you think you should want. They're about you finally being willing to live a life that's yours, really yours, even if it doesn't look like what you planned, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else, even if it means disappointing people, even if it means starting over, even if it means admitting that everything you've built so far was built for the wrong reasons. And that's terrifying. Of course it's terrifying. Your numbness, as awful as it feels, is also safe. It's predictable. You know how to function while numb. You've been doing it for months or years, but actually feeling again, actually being alive again, that means being vulnerable again, being hurt again, being disappointed again, making mistakes again, not knowing again. The numbness protected you from all of that. But it also protected you from joy, from love, from meaning, from purpose, from connection, from the very things that make life worth living. So at some point you have to decide, do you want to stay safe and numb? Or do you want to risk everything for a chance to actually feel alive again? Not happy necessarily, not fixed, not perfect, but alive, real, present, connected to yourself and your life instead of watching it all from behind glass. If you're still here, if you've listened this far, then something in you is ready. Maybe not your mind, maybe not your false self that's panicking about what this all means, but something deeper. Your soul recognizes these words because your soul has been waiting for permission to tell you the truth, permission to stop pretending, permission to withdraw from a life that isn't yours. And this video, these words, maybe they're giving you that permission. Maybe they're confirming what you already knew but were too scared to admit, that you're not broken, that your numbness isn't a malfunction, that everything you're experiencing, as painful as it is actually your soul's way of saving you from a life that would have slowly killed everything real in you. Se você sente que precisa desse refúgio, desse espaço semanal onde sua dor é compreendida sem julgamento, onde sua dormência é reconhecida como sagrada e não como fraqueza, inscreva-se no canal. Não é apenas um canal, é um encontro de almas que se recusam a continuar fingindo, que escolheram o caminho difícil de serem reais, em vez do caminho fácil de serem aceitáveis. Toda semana, mergulhamos nos ensinamentos de Rumi, não como teoria bonita, mas como medicina real para feridas reais. Ao se inscrever, você se junta a milhares que também estão atravessando essa noite escura, que também estão aprendendo que às vezes você precisa morrer completamente para poder viver de verdade. Rumi nos espera, sempre. So here you are, still numb, still empty, still not sure what comes next. But maybe now, maybe for the first time, you're willing to stop fighting it. You're willing to let the numbness be what it is, a message from your soul that the life you've been living isn't your life, that the person you've been being isn't who you are, that everything needs to fall apart so something true can finally be built. And maybe that's enough for today. Not knowing what comes next, but knowing that the numbness isn't your enemy. Not having answers, but having the willingness to sit in the questions. Not feeling alive yet, but no longer trying to force yourself to feel something you don't feel. Just being exactly where you are, which is nowhere, which is nothing, which is the most honest you've been in years. And from that honesty, that brutal, uncomfortable, unglamorous honesty, something new becomes possible. Not today, probably not tomorrow, but eventually. Your soul is patient. It's been waiting this long. It can wait a little longer. The question is, can you finally stop running long enough to hear what it's been trying to tell you? Can you sit in the numbness without trying to escape it? Can you let yourself be nothing so you can discover who you actually are beneath all the layers of who you've been pretending to be? Rumi says the wound is where the light enters. Your numbness is the wound. Stop covering it up. Stop trying to heal it too quickly. Let it be open. Let the light in. Let yourself be unmade. Because on the other side of this unmaking, on the other side of this death of your false self, is a life you can't even imagine right now. A life that's actually yours. A life worth feeling something about. But first, you have to be willing to feel nothing. First, you have to die. And that's exactly what you're doing right now, whether you realize it or not. You're dying. And it's the most important thing that's ever happened to you.